To start, can you give a brief overview of what the Inflation Reduction Act is and specifically what it hopes to address and how?
Well, it really truly is a transformational piece of legislation, $369 billion in climate and clean energy investments. Everything from energy to transportation, healthy communities, manufacturing, agriculture, public lands and waters, buildings. It's really extensive, both in terms of how it will transform our economy and move us more strongly towards a clean energy economy, and how it also helps families and individuals in terms of energy efficiency programs. There's a lot of money in here for building solar, more wind, and other kinds of renewable energy, mostly through incentives. It's a lot of carrots, not too many sticks. There is one stick, though, and it has to do with methane. But it really is the most extensive investment that the United States has ever made in terms of climate and clean energy policy legislation. And it's important for a number of reasons. Number one, it really will move us, as I said, strongly towards a clean energy economy that's going to reduce emissions 40% by 2030. And that's really near the goal that we need to get to. We need to push further to get to that 50% reduction by 2030, which is really what's required. But this legislation over a 10-year period will really move us in that direction. And one of the things that's important is that the fact that it's a 10-year investment will send a market signal to the private sector. So a lot of times, these incentives have been relatively short term for solar, for example, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. This is significant because it provides some certainty to the market and to a business. And why that's important is that these government investments certainly will spark and leverage more private sector investment in many of these areas. And what does business want more than anything else? That's predictability and certainty. And so this really helps with that. And certainly in terms of the agriculture food system, there are significant provisions that we'll talk about. The agricultural sector comprises about 24% of total greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, 9% in the United States. So it is a very significant sector. One of the things that's really notable about this piece of legislation is the Conservation Stewardship Program, which is currently funded about $1.8 billion a year. And these are the kinds of programs that help individual farmers with their land conservation and projects to improve their soil health and many other aspects of their land that they're farming. And so in the IRA, that program has been bumped up to $3.5 billion a year. So significant increase, because the $1.8 billion a year was always getting outstripped by demand. So this is very significant in terms of really directing money to farmers and agricultural users to really help conserve their lands. And there's many different programs under this and initiatives under this umbrella that will help in that regard. Well, I think the renewable energy tax credits will really provide more opportunity for sort of multi-use of land in the agricultural sector. So we want to see, and there's a lot of interest in the farming community and agricultural community about building renewable resources as part of that system. And this will provide more incentives for farmers to build solar on their land. And there's, we all know that there are concurrent use that really can take place in terms of renewable energy development, solar, pollinator crops, and, as well as crops that produce food. So I think there's a lot of interest in how is it that these systems can complement each other and coexist. So this will make it easier and provide stronger incentives to do that.
Awesome.
The monies for these programs are going to flow through. First, obviously, we'll go to U.S. Department of Agriculture. But one of the things that's really important about this program and this legislation in many of its aspects and sectors is how the money and resources and organization of it are going to flow down. And so some of these dollars will come to the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture. There's certainly the Farm Bureau world that will also be involved with it. But I really think that, as we design these programs and implement them, we're very much interested in how they can be made to be understandable and accessible on the local aspect. Even though these dollars are federal and they start with Congress, ultimately, how this program is effective over the long term is going to be how do these dollars effectively flow and are used on the local level. In our case, your question, local farmers, local agricultural resources, local conservation efforts. How is that all going to fit together? So there are many stakeholders, many partners involved in this effort, and it will be over a long period of time, the rest of this decade and longer to implement these programs. So again, so the time horizon is significant for folks to take advantage of these resources. So $369 billion is a lot of money, a lot of investment. And although on the one hand, it can be very complex in terms of how all these programs work together and how the dollars flow, I think we really need to be in touch with our congressional representatives. Their offices have offered, obviously, to be very helpful to us in terms of leading us through these processes. And as these dollars flow down to the states, our New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, Commissioner Jasper and his team certainly will be folks that we need to be in touch with. And our state legislators as well, in terms of how they interact with state agencies and to make sure that these dollars get to the places where they're most needed and can do the most good in terms of meeting our goals, creating agricultural resiliency, soil health, and so that our agricultural sector is a significant part of the solution in terms of reducing emissions, but also at the same time producing the food that we need locally, and that we can help economically our farmers and agricultural community thrive. So there's so many aspects of it that fit together, but I think we really have to pay attention to how these programs are being designed. But I think it's our elected representatives and our folks at the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture that can really be our best contacts.
I think we talked about this at the Emory Farm event, but I'm assuming our like more local or state offices for NRCS and like rural development, I'm sure that will probably be a part of it too.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think, as I said, there are a lot of stakeholders in this process in all the various aspects of the Inflation Reduction Act. But for this sector, there's folks here on the ground in New Hampshire who've been here for a long time and have a great understanding of our community and how these dollars can best be deployed to meet the goals that we have.